Broadcasting from the Schneider 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Studios. This is the Rock Station 97.7 WLER FM Butler Cranberry. The Grassroots Show, Sunday nights at 7. Brought to you by Shady Lady Productions on the Rock Station 97.7. Now, back to the Grassroots Show, brought to you by Shady Lady Productions on the Rock Station 97.7.
Welcome back to the Grassroots Show here on the Rock Station 97.7. Again, I'm Bob Cupp, along with Utah Burgess, and we have another special guest who is visiting with us tonight. And Utah, you know that I'm a big fan of the guitar. You brought that up a couple of different times. And we have a guy that is originally from this area, lives out in California now, and really, I think, is on the verge of making a major splash. Not that he hasn't made a splash already, but killer new album out that we're going to be hearing some cuts from.
Yeah, when you told me we were going to be interviewing this guy tonight, I was pretty excited. So let's go.
Greg Marra joins us from California and originally from Butler. Greg, how are you?
Hey, doing really well. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Of course, Greg, give us a little background. You're originally from Butler, Pennsylvania, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I grew up there and lived there 21 years and then moved off to Philly to be closer to, sort of like the New York music scene. And then a few years after that, moved to L.A. And I've been here, 14 years now.
And you've actually made it back into this area a couple of different times over the years. I know, was it about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago? I'm trying to recollect. You were down at, for example, Monroe Hotel playing.
Yeah, those guys are great. It's the Reese family always, rolls out the red carpet for me. And for me, it's like, coming into town is a reunion of sorts with friends and family. And what better way than to, get on stage and play guitar. So it's always been great there.
I'm curious, what first ever led you to play a guitar?
Oh, man. Well, let's see. My mom used to play ukulele, actually. So when I was a real little kid, I can remember her making up songs with, just a handful of chords. And then, we didn't really listen to rock or anything, maybe the Beatles when I was a kid. And then when I got a little bit older, my cousin gave me an 8-track, and it was Kiss Alive 2. And, in the middle of that, you have Ace Frehley doing his thing, and it was like, that was it for me. And I guess I kind of figured it out from there. I went from, listening to Elvis and the Beatles and, my dad listened to Oak Ridge Boys and stuff. So, it wasn't too heavy or anything like that until I listened to Kiss, and then it was like, it was on.
Ace Frehley set the tone for you.
I think for many people.
Yeah. So is that why you kind of led you down the turnpike to Philadelphia to get a little closer to that New York groove, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man.
Very cool. I'm curious today, are there any guitarists out there that on the newer side of things that you've come maybe cross paths with that kind of jump out at you as players?
Man, it's like, I can remember being sort of like in that, 15, 16 age group. And when Steve Vai first came out with David Lee Roth, man, that was it for me. I sort of saw the path that I wanted to take based on what he was doing with guitar. I mean, of course, there was always Van Halen there. And then, so I stayed on that path as far as, what I like. I like guitar players that are technical and you can tell they have the guitar in their hands most of the day kind of thing, So later on was like Jason Becker and, some of those guys that were really going crazy with, neoclassical guitar and things like that. As far as recently, I mean, I still love Steve Vai. I love his records and stuff and the way he plays. There's a new guy. Well, not so new. I mean, I guess he's my age, but Guthrie Govan, who is lesser known, but in the guitar community, he's just a huge name. And this guy can do anything on the guitar. And when you see him play, you just know that whatever's in his head, his fingers are 10 steps ahead. So for me, it's like when I listen to guitar players, at least, I definitely still listen for that technical aspect.
No doubt you have seen quite a different, I guess, in the relatively short time period you've been in California. There's been such a transition in the music industry with the internet development, and I know you've been very active on keeping things up on the web. But in that short time period, and I'm sure you see it, as a glaring example in California of how the music industry is changing because of the technology factor.
Well, that's a huge sort of lead into where we are today. As far as what can I do with a laptop that I might have had to rent, a studio for $2,000 a day, hired an engineer and a producer and a staff of guys. So it's like literally we've gone from that being necessary to have a $2,000 a day overhead to why don't I just spend $2,000 on the best laptop I can get and I can do the same thing in my house, and that's what I've done. As far as, running somewhat of an independent record label, I mean, I put all my records out on my own label and, so I'm able to control everything from distribution to, touring to who's in my band to when I do it. And as far as can a guy do that on his own? It's definitely possible, and it's definitely possible to do it on your own terms. As far as what can an independent record label do for an artist? I mean, maybe if I had $1 million overhead for every record I put out, I might be able to market it a little bit better. But, for what, my purposes are, I'm just happy because I can tour when I want and I can release exactly what I want in terms of, the record, so if I like it, whenever it satisfies, what I like, then I can put it out. So, as far as, the state of the music industry today, I think it's exactly where it should be as far as, what an independent artist wants.
That's very well said. That we've even discussed that a few times on past episodes, sort of that whole do-it-yourself attitude that's with a lot of musicians anymore, and also just the whole 360, the whole 360 degree control of your art, your business side of it, and marketing everything. And I think that's a big positive for the industry personally.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
You've heard horror stories, if I could use that term, over the years where, bands, even successful bands, have been kind of pigeonholed into a particular area, and it's caused bands to break up. I mean, we're talking major national acts because of the record company deciding that they needed to do it this way, where, Greg Marra can do it your way. You have that freedom of expression, and as long as you're satisfied with it, it's your product, it's your baby.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, something interesting about that, not to cut in, but, let's just imagine that really, if you have a distributor, if you have a way to get your music on iTunes or market it otherwise, on Amazon and what have you, so once you figure that part of the industry out, you can literally, as soon as you have your recording gear, you can do it for next to no money. An independent artist can get his music on iTunes for less than $100. So, that overhead takes all of the, sort of the money aspect out of the creative process, which is huge for me because when I'm trying to be creative, I don't want any pressure.
Yeah, one less thing to worry about. Yeah,
absolutely.
Very cool. We're talking with Greg Marra. He's a native of Butler, now living in California, and we're going to find out what he's up to currently. Has a new disc out. We'll talk about some of the musicians he's played with, and in particular, some of the musicians that are on that disc. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to hear some names come out at you that I'm sure you've heard of that are associated with Greg Marra. Again, it's the Grassroots Show here on the Rock Station 97.7. Greg, let's dive into your first CD and kind of go back in time a little bit. Collective Disorder, which you released a few years ago, and play a couple of songs here as we take a little break musically. Let's talk about maybe Swift Kick out of the gate here.
Absolutely. Well, this first record I put out, I was definitely trying to prove something. So when you listen to it, there are a lot of notes, but at the same time, I try to keep that inherent, sort of melodic sensibility